Deep in the frozen wilderness, an entire town vanished without a trace. Only faded maps and old legends prove it ever existed. My team was determined to find the truth behind the mystery. We ignored the warnings and headed into the unknown. Upon arrival, the silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Inside, we found signs of a sudden, panicked departure. No struggle, no tracks, just a haunting emptiness. Then, we uncovered a relic that felt wrong. The air grew cold, and the sky began to warp above us. That's when we realized we were not alone. Every step deeper into the town felt like a mistake. We found ruins where life had stopped in an instant. Unsettling sketches on the walls whispered of a hidden terror. The objects we uncovered belonged to no known culture. Suddenly, our navigation failed, spinning wildly in the dark. Things began to move on their own in the frozen air. I found a final diary hidden beneath the floorboards. The last entry spoke of shadows that consume the mind. A flickering lamp revealed a figure that shouldn't be there. As the sun vanished, the shadows became our only company. Night fell like a heavy shroud, forcing us to rely on our flashlights. But the beams of light only seemed to make the shadows more aggressive. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a calculated step behind us. Then, we saw them. Footprints in the frost, ending abruptly in the middle of the street. No trail leading away, no signs of a struggle. Just gone. Our equipment began to fail. The radios emitted a low, rhythmic hum. It sounded almost like a distorted, ancient chant. Suddenly, a door slammed shut in the house we had just cleared. We weren't looking for a settlement anymore. We were looking for a way out, before the darkness noticed us. The glowing eyes at the window were no longer distant. They pressed closer, silently watching. Soon we heard furious scratching, then desperate banging, trying to force entry. Panic seized us. We frantically barricaded the doors, a futile attempt. We ran blindly through collapsing halls, driven by sheer terror. Someone fell, their flashlight rolling into the deep shadows. A chilling scream echoed, quickly swallowed by the night. This wasn't a town. It was a trap. We realized it had been watching us all along, from every shadow. Every escape route felt like a dead end. And then, the true darkness revealed itself. We were scattered. The darkness had found us. Lost in the labyrinth of the dying town, every shadow seemed to hide them. Then, I saw something I couldn't explain. A figure, unnaturally still. It stood at the edge of my flashlight beam, a silhouette against the oppressive night. But as I crept closer, I realized it wasn't a survivor. It was one of them, silent, motionless, a living effigy. We found others like it, frozen in poses of ultimate terror. Some staring blankly at the sky, others reaching out in silent screams. It wasn't just a curse, it was a harvest. And we were the next to be reaped. The journal finally revealed the truth. This wasn't a curse. It was a harvest, a ritual to appease an ancient entity. The townspeople didn't vanish. They were taken, absorbed. Each frozen figure was a soul trapped, a vessel for its power. And the entity itself? It fed on despair, on fear. It lured them with whispers, then froze them in moments of ultimate terror. Our only hope was to disrupt the source, to break the ritual. The ancient diary spoke of a central point, a nexus of its power. We had to reach it, no matter the cost. But the shadows were closing in faster than we could run. The Nexus was a cathedral of stone that defied every law of architecture. The air here vibrated with a frequency that made our teeth ache. Then, without warning, the shadows lunged from the walls. Sarah was gone in a heartbeat, her screams swallowed by the absolute cold. There were only two of us left, trembling in the face of the ancient dark. We reached the altar, a monolith of obsidian stained with centuries of sorrow. This was the anchor, the beating heart of the harvest. I placed the ancient diary on the stone, feeling its pages pulse with life. The entity roared, a sound felt in the soul rather than the ears. The very fabric of reality began to tear apart around us. The air vanished, sucked into the cracking altar. Through the fractures, I saw thousands of trapped souls. I recognized Sarah, her face frozen in a plea for mercy. Then the void rose, a tidal wave of ink and hate. I gripped the diary as the floor began to dissolve. Cold blue flames erupted, revealing the town's true fate. Memories of the lost flooded my mind like a storm. The ritual wasn't a stop. It was the final harvest. But a golden spark from the journal offered one last hope. I slammed my hand into the core, and the world exploded. The blast threw me backward into the freezing snow. Silence returned, but the town felt different. The frozen figures were gone, turned into pillars of salt. I scrambled to my feet, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The Nexus structure was collapsing into the earth. I ran toward the jeep, not looking back at the ruins. The sky was clearing, but the stars looked wrong. My radio crackled to life with a familiar voice. It was Sarah, but she sounded miles away, or years. "Don't leave me," the voice whispered through the static. I fumbled with the ignition, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The Jeep's engine sputtered, refusing to catch in the biting cold. Sarah's voice grew louder, twisting into a haunting, desperate plea. "Don't abandon me again," she whispered, her words chilling my blood. My breath hitched. Was this the real Sarah, or something mimicking her? Then, the reflection of a pale, spectral face appeared in my rearview mirror. It was her, crying silent tears, her eyes filled with sorrow and fear. The engine roared to life with a desperate, guttural cough. I slammed the gas, speeding away from the dying town, but the radio static filled the Jeep, carrying her mournful, echoing farewell. I drove for what felt like an eternity, the ghost town a vanishing silhouette in my rearview mirror. But the stat on the radio never faded. It pulsed, a constant, unnerving companion. Sarah's whisper returned, no longer a desperate plea, but a chillingly calm, detached echo. "You can't outrun what's inside you," it repeated, now seeming to come from within the Jeep itself. A terrifying thought struck me. Had something followed me? Attached itself to me? Or was it truly Sarah, lost forever? The engine suddenly choked and died, the Jeep skidding to a halt on the empty, frozen highway. Silence descended, absolute and crushing. The radio was dead. The Jeep was dead. I was truly alone. Then, a faint, cold mist began to coalesce in the passenger seat. It took the shape of Sarah, not crying, but smiling a faint, knowing smile, her form translucent and serene. "You found me," she whispered, her voice finally clear, before fading with the mist into the cold, silent night.